What is it that makes one person creepy and another person attractive? Hey everyone, Harris O'Malley from DrNerdLove.com. One of the issues that comes up on my blog, on Twitter, even among some of my clients, is the fear of being creepy. As absurd as it may sound, this is a very real anxiety for a lot of men. After all, you can't really chuck a rock without hitting 4 stories from women about how some guy made them feel incredibly unsafe. And while there are assholes out there who will push back and complain about how unfair it is for women to call men creepy like that, there will also be men who hear those stories and think, oh God, was that me? Guys, especially the ones who are not the most socially well-calibrated, often worry about being creepy by accident. They're worried that they're going to make one mistake that will start a chain reaction that starts with them being called creepy and ends with them dying alone in a cave because they've been ostracized from all society. And in fairness, when you are dealing with issues like approach anxiety, meeting, approaching, and flirting with women can often feel like you're being asked to walk a tightrope across a canyon. And the canyon is full of knives, and the rope is on fire. But this is an overreaction. While it's good to be concerned with making sure that women are comfortable in your presence, the people who are most worried about being called a creeper aren't actually listening to what women are saying when they're telling these stories. And instead, they're letting their confirmation bias take a story about one person's bad behavior and turning it into pathologizing being a little awkward. 'Cause hey, fuck you, nerd. Straight talk. Just as women are not running around maliciously putting men to the friend zone, they're also not going around calling men creepers because he looked at her for just a second too long. For real. It's not that hard to avoid being creepy. And before anyone says it, no, the answer is just be attractive. A, you're not original, get some new material. B, Jared Leto would like to have a word with you. In fact, let's put a pin in that. We're going to come back to that in a minute. There are 2 things to keep in mind when it comes to avoiding being creepy. The first is to understand what it is that makes a person seem creepy. And believe it or not, there is some actual science on the subject. Knox University did a study, interestingly the first of its kind, about what precisely it is that makes someone creepy. Now, I've linked to the study in the show notes, so go check it out, but the short version of it is, the thing that makes one person safe and another person creepy is ambiguity. The reason why some women get a weird, creeped out feeling around a guy isn't about whether he's hot or not, it's that he set off her Spidey-sense. Not enough for a full flight or fight response, but enough to put her on her guard. The vagueness of that sensation, the unanswered question of, is this person a danger to me or not, leaves her in a very awkward and uncomfortable position. That ambiguity means that the woman in question doesn't know what response is right. And choosing the wrong response can potentially have serious consequences. As a result, they're stuck in a state of almost anxious paralysis. And to make matters worse, women have been taught not to trust their own instincts. All you have to do is fire up Twitter and see how many times women are told, on a daily basis, no, you should give that guy a chance. He's a nice guy. You can trust him. He didn't mean whatever weird sketched out thing that he did that put you off. Or, for that matter, watch how many times guys push back against calling someone else creepy and how unfair it all is. And of course, when women do try to give someone the benefit of the doubt, when they do go along to get along, and they choose wrong, now they've got people telling them, hey, you really should have known better, and it's all your fault. It's damned if you do, and damned if you don't. Now, you know that you are completely harmless. You spend all of your free time reading to the blind and rescuing orphaned kittens from burning buildings. But she doesn't know that. Women, especially women who don't know you personally, have no way of knowing that. All they know is how you're presenting yourself, how you're behaving, and how you make them feel. This may seem unfair to you, but women are vulnerable to physical and sexual threats in a way that men aren't. If they're in an ambiguous situation and they choose wrong, they've just lowered their defenses around someone who intends them harm. This is why the second part of not being a creeper, is to understand what behaviors trigger that sense of ambiguous threat. So, with the understanding that this is by no means an exhaustive list, let's look at some of the things that the Knox University study found that people rated as being incredibly creepy. Invading someone's personal space, talking too much about inappropriate topics, particularly sexual topics, laughing at random times, not letting somebody exit a conversation, asking inappropriate questions, displaying unwanted sexual interest, unwanted touching, excessively pale skin, greasy hair, baggy eyes, weird or excessively dirty clothing. So, basically the Joker.
Huh? No. You know, I'll settle for his loved ones. Well, hello, beautiful. Well, you look nervous. Is it the scars? You want to know how I got them?
Now, several of you have already latched on to those last few and getting ready to jump into the comments and say, see, it's all about looks. Hold on to those hot takes, because it's not about whether someone is attractive or not. It's about what their appearance and presentation tells other people about them. Those particular signs, the excessively pale skin, the incredibly dirty clothes, greasy hair, deep bags under the eyes, these are all signs that either they don't take care of themselves or that there's something wrong with them. These are all things that tend to correspond with issues like drug addiction or mental illness. That brings in this issue of unpredictability. What does that say about this individual? You don't feel as though you can accurately predict what this person may or may not do. Even if you know intellectually that people who suffer from mental illness are more likely to be the victims of violence rather than the perpetrators, you're still on your guard just in case. And that sense of be careful just in case applies to other behaviors on this list as well. A guy who invades a woman's personal space or backs her into a corner or up against a wall is sending a threat signal, possibly without intending to. By standing so close to her, he is making it impossible for her to get away. If he wants to, he can keep her from leaving. The guy who asks inappropriate questions, where do you live? Do you live alone? Do you have roommates? Are you from here? Maybe he's just trying to get to know you, or maybe he's trying to get information to figure out how vulnerable you are. Other behaviors like demanding hugs or touching someone excessively also trigger those threat signals. Yes, they could just be a touchy-feely individual and mean no harm, but why are they ignoring her signs of discomfort? Even behaviors that, in the grand scheme of things, are fairly minor, not letting someone out of a conversation or bringing up uncomfortable or even sexual topics, are issues that will set off a woman's spider-sense. Why? Because of what it says about that person. Are they unaware of her discomfort? Or do they just not care? Is it ignorance? Or are they pushing boundaries to see what they can get away with? Of course, many, if not all of these behaviors can have perfectly innocent explanations. Someone who isn't the most socially fluent may not recognize the signs that somebody wants to leave a conversation. One person's inappropriate sexual comments are another person's sexy banter. The person who keeps trying to flirt with a woman who is clearly not interested may just be clueless. But whether this person is legitimately clueless or not, these are still examples of someone prioritizing their own interests and desires over another person's comfort and boundaries. It is entirely possible they are completely innocent, just ignorant, or they could be testing the waters. And there are people who will use being socially awkward as an excuse to get away with incredibly inappropriate behavior. And that's exactly the problem. The ambiguity in this situation, is this person clueless or a predator, puts women into an awkward state. Do they risk being rude? Or do they risk being dead? Now, a common response is for people to point out that, hey, I saw this hot dude do any of these things on this list, and they got away with it. But this argument misses two vitally important components to not being creepy. The first component is social calibration. The reason why a comedian could get away with telling a joke that anyone else telling it would warrant a visit from the slap fairy is that the comedian understands how to read the room and to know where the line is and how close they can get to it without actually going over. A person who is socially well calibrated and experienced will recognize who is comfortable with sexy topics and avoid bringing up the subject with someone who wouldn't be. The other important component of this is consent. We appreciate being touched by people we want touching us. Touching someone who doesn't want to be touched or invading their personal space is intensely creepy no matter what you look like. To put it another way, gentlemen, I want you to imagine that Ryan Reynolds has just walked up behind you and has started massaging your shoulders. In fact, I want you to imagine that you know that every time you see him, he is going to come over, he is going to start touching you, he's going to lean in, maybe breathe on your neck as he whispers in your ear, rubbing his crotch up against your hand, and telling you that he wants to watch you jerk off in the bathroom. Ryan Reynolds is unquestionably hot. Therefore, this can't be creepy. You should be pleased with the fact that hypothetical Deadpool wants to see you jerk it. Except, hey, odds are you're not gay or bi. Ryan Reynolds, as hot as he is not someone that you want to be sexual with. It would be a different story if it were Kat Dennings or Christina Hendricks or Zazie Beetz rubbing themselves up on you. But Ryan Reynolds, Channing Tatum, Brad Pitt, or any other hot dude you want to name coming up and rubbing his dick on your thigh is probably going to freak you out. Which is the entire point. It doesn't matter if it was someone who was voted sexiest man alive. The fact that they are ignoring your discomfort, ignoring your consent, makes their behavior unspeakably creepy. Now, I know there are a lot of you who have just thrown your hands up and said, you know what? Fine, I'll just never approach women ever. And hey, if that's really what you want, then more power to you. You do you, bro. But let's be real. That's an abdication of responsibility. Even when you're saying this with the best of intentions, you legitimately cringe at the idea of accidentally creeping a woman out, so you're going to avoid them and just isolate yourself. What you're ultimately saying is learning to pay attention to other people's comfort and avoid behavior that kind of wigs people out is just too much to ask. Straight talk. This isn't complicated. No matter what bullshit you've read on Twitter or Reddit, nobody is going around saying men are not allowed to approach or flirt or talk to women. When women talk about guys who creep them out and having to do the mental calculus of is this person a threat to me or not, they're not saying never talk to any woman you don't already know ever. They're asking you to listen and to have some empathy and some understanding. They want you to consider somebody else's perspective and understand things that would never bother you set off alarm bells in people who are vulnerable in ways that you aren't. Women, as fucked up as it is, live in a world where they can never be entirely sure which guy is or isn't going to ignore their no, or which guy's going to go shoot up a school because she rejected him. They want you to understand just how fucked up the world is for women as they try to navigate through it, and maybe don't make it any harder than it already is. At the same time, though, this doesn't mean overcompensate and become so hypersensitive that you are looking for any tiny muscle twitch that says that somebody's uncomfortable and then have it a corresponding freak out. That isn't helpful, and it tends to make it more about you than someone else's comfort and safety. What you should do to avoid being creepy is just pay attention. Understand that sometimes what you intended is not how it came across to somebody else. And hey, if you trip the creeper alarm by accident, then all you have to do is apologize. Oh, hey, I'm sorry. That sounded way different in my head. That came out wrong. I am so sorry. I'm sorry. Am I making you uncomfortable? I really don't mean to. I'm sorry. I'll stop. And then let it go. And just don't do it again. Women understand that sometimes you're gonna shove your foot in your mouth by accident. They do it too. Everybody does it. If you can show that no, it really was just a mistake, they'll recognize it for the false alarm that it is. And it's important to note, this doesn't mean that you can't approach or flirt or talk to women. In fact, being mindful of women's comfort and safety actually helps you in the long run. After all, there is no woman alive who can feel sexy if she doesn't feel safe. What does this mean practically speaking? Well, sometimes it means just letting the moment pass. You may want to get to know that cutie, but you were just not in a place or at a time when it's appropriate to flirt. You'd love to get that woman's number, but she seems a little reluctant, and it's better to let it go than to push and push and push and risk crossing the line. Sometimes the best thing you can do when you're interested in someone is give her enough space so that she can come to you when she's ready. A guy who is conscious and aware of a woman's comfort levels and makes sure that she can feel relaxed in his presence, that dude is gold, even if he's a little awkward. A guy who doesn't push her boundaries, who doesn't ignore her discomfort, that man is a prize, even if he's not the smoothest of the smooth. The guy that women can feel safe saying no to, that man is all too rare and incredibly desirable. And hey, if you want to know more about how to avoid being creepy, what signs to look for, how to recover from it, check some of the articles that I've linked to in the show notes. Yeah, there are a lot of creepers out there, but with some understanding, some empathy, and some self-awareness, you won't be one of them. Hey, thanks for checking out the latest video. So there's a lot to take in here, and I will be doing more about understanding and reading body language and how to read people's signs in a future video. So if you have any questions about that, then be sure to share them in the comments below. And hey, if you've got a short dating question or another topic you'd like to hear more about on here, then hit me up. Share that in the comments as well, or send it to me at doc@drnerdlove.com with "for YouTube" in the subject. And hey, if you want to build up your social calibration and work on those social skills, then check out some of my books. I especially recommend New Game Plus, The Geek's Guide to Love, Sex, and Dating. I have material in there specifically about how to read body language, how to interpret her signals so that you don't make a mistake. It's really awesome. I think it would really help you out. Links to buy it are in the show notes, so check it out. And if you do check it out, do me a huge favor. Leave a review on Amazon and Goodreads. If you dug the video, then you know what to do. Hit that thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to never miss an update. If you really enjoyed this, if you're finding this is really helping, if you're getting a lot out of the videos, then consider supporting the channel by becoming a patron at patreon.com/drnerdlove. Even $1 is a huge help, and I can't do this without the support of all my patrons. Meanwhile, you can find me on Twitter at @drnerdlove. Join the Facebook page at facebook.com/drnerdlove. And as always, hit that logo to subscribe, check out my other videos. And I will be back with you next time with more about love, sex, and dating. Later.